Hi. So I want to talk about how the last act of The Last Exorcism completely undercuts the rest of the movie. Last Exorcism is a 2010 horror movie, found footage. And the found footage gimmick here, because obviously we're far enough into the found footage thing that no one believes the actual found footage, particularly in this case when you recognize the entire cast. Yes, the framing device here is it's a documentary crew that's following the last exorcism of a preacher named Cotton Marcus. And it's the last exorcism for him because, well, he is a self-professed spiritual grifter. He has been preaching since he was a young boy, and I'm sure that was just a really, really fun experience for that poor congregation that had to listen to a 10-year-old preacher. But that was the setup here. He's been preaching since he was a young boy. There's some slight hints about him having some experience in faith healing to go along with that, but also his side business, possibly main moneymaker, is exorcism, which he says is alive and well in the world, in many, many religions. And so he's been doing this for a number of years. And what's making him stop is he read a news story about a child who is killed, suffocated during an exorcism. That made him realize, and he has a son too, a young son about the same age, I guess, as the victim of this exorcism. And it's making him realize that exorcism is something that leaves vulnerable people at the mercy of, often children, at the mercy of religious leaders and families who either don't understand what this person is going through, whether it be mental illness or epilepsy or some other kind of medical or mental thing, that they either don't understand, even though it's in the modern era, or simply choose not to acknowledge. And he doesn't want to be part of that anymore. But he wants to document what it's like for posterity, just for one last time, one last job. Always a good sign in a movie. This will go well. So he chooses, so he's going to pick the last case that's submitted to him, which in this case is a girl named Nell. He gets there and realizes that Nell, very sweet, very sheltered girl, from a fairly fundamentalist Christian family, and that got even more extreme after the death of the mother, which the family is not handling at all well. The father, pulled them out of the church because it said it's been corrupted, even though that was basically their only social outlet, her and her brother, and is basically just keeping them at home all the time, teaching them himself, and also seems to have a drinking problem. So, the Reverend Cotton Marcus, I'm not sure if he's a reverend, actually. It's not established. It's also not established what denomination he's actually from. Slight flaw with this movie. It just seems to be a stereotypical mishmash of what the writer and director think is, American Midwest / Southern religion. Like, from what we see of the church, it could be Pentecostal, it could be Baptist, it could be evangelical. It's unclear. But so Cotton starts the exorcism. At first he shows the audience, us and the film audience theoretically, the props. He has this crucifix that lets out a puff of smoke to indicate that the demon has been captured and vanquished, and that shows how he strings the wires through the room, like under the bed, to shake things, and then up through the picture frames to shake them at pivotal moments. and very cleverly disguised speaker systems to play, I guess, the sounds of the demon leaving or tormenting this person more. So he begins the exorcism, and it didn't exactly go as planned. Even though he's in the middle of a crisis of faith, he's like, okay, demons are nonsense. I know this is total bullshit just to make money. But he doesn't have much success exorcising Nell. And she keeps exhibiting these symptoms. And they're all fairly standard exorcism movie tropes. There's a lot of contorting, a lot of eye rolling, a lot of screaming, a lot of trash talking on the part of the demon, and self-harm. At some point in the movie, she starts breaking her fingers, just to show that, like, you know, which rather indicates like the body of Nell is being destroyed by this demon, and now she's the person of Nell is completely disconnected from her own pain. So he begins this exorcism. It doesn't go at all planned. She doesn't seem to be stopping any of these symptoms, and that makes Cotton sort of doubt the conclusions that he had recently come to, and also realize, and then maybe it is demonic possession, or maybe there's just something deeply wrong with this family, because he begins to suspect the father of some abuse towards Nell, with, you know, what with isolating her from the world, with his drinking, with and maybe needing to create a new, like, a new family now that his wife is gone. But which he thinks is kind of confirmed when they bring Nell to the hospital and discover that she's pregnant, even though she has no social life and hasn't been to that church youth group in months. And then he brings this back to the father, accuses him, and the father, of course, is like, no, it's the demon that did it, obviously. Because the demon that they've decided, the two of them, the father and the preacher, have decided is responsible for it, is one that has as its targets young girls to defile, because, of course, it's a religious thing, and virginity is fairly prized, yeah. And female sexuality is evil. There's a lot of that in this movie, because Nell has been taught to dress modestly. The secular world is going to corrupt her. All the usual things that Christian girls tend to get told. And that the demon is showing, signs of the demonic female sexuality that will obviously destroy the world if let out there, and has to be kept under tight control. So at one point they wind up in the barn, the whole family, and because she's been hurting the livestock, I don't know why the demons always go for the livestock, but, you know, or for Goody Putnam or whatever, obviously we're still going to hurt the cows, and the family isn't a farm, so that makes sense. And she goes back into her thing of, like, she's breaking her fingers, she's contorting, she's eye rolling, and starts, like, you know, saying the shocking things. And at one point she turns to the preacher and says, "Hey preacher, do you want a blowing job?" And that's kind of where he breaks and goes, what's a blowing job? You don't know, do you? You don't even know that's not what it's called. Because the demon would know, but maybe Nell doesn't. because she's an innocent little girl who's way out of her depth. And that's when Nell breaks and just starts, you know, crying and like, oh yeah, sobbing, like she's not that innocent, she's not. And we realize, you know, this is a girl who met someone at youth group, had sex, and has been taught so much through her entire life that sexuality is wrong, that any feelings toward anyone else or any sin was obviously the only way she could handle it in her mind is that it was a demon corrupting her. So you think that's where the movie is wrapping up. It's like, okay, girl made a mistake. There are totally logical explanations for all of this, and this is someone who was had her life nearly destroyed by this repressive environment of the church she was in and then pulled out of, and then by her father. But then the Cotton and the filmmakers, they go to, out of curiosity, they wanted to meet the boy, Nell's baby daddy. They go to where they totally is, and they find out that no, there's no possible way that this guy was the boyfriend, because he says, I'm gay. He says it fairly low-key, because they're a conservative town, but he's basically like, no, we're not, I've never, with girls, you know what I'm saying, right? I don't know where you get this idea. So they're like, oh, okay. So who on earth got Nell pregnant? What is going on? Is it the father? Was it this preacher? So they go back to the farm, and then the movie takes a hard left into infuriating and undercuts everything it's done. Because the brother attacks them, and they run through the woods, and there's a black mass, and the preacher is chanting over Nell while she gives birth to the demon baby, and they're running through the woods again, and they drop the camera, cut to black. Like every other found footage thing ever since Blair Witch. And it's just so frustrating that they had to do that when they had made a good story about the effect of repression in religious spaces on families and women particularly, and young girls taught to hate their sexuality. And it's a very, very bad thing unless it's in marriage specifically, to breed children, to go out there and convert more people for the Lord. And that if you're deep in that, I guess in some cases, and in Nell's case, you can't see it as anything other than pure evil if you falter. But then they had to completely undercut that with like, nope, demons are real. That's it. Demon baby. So frustrating.